Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to today's Department of Computer Science and Engineering graduate student panel. We're delighted to provide this opportunity for you to hear from some of our current graduate students, as well as a member of our faculty who is gracious enough to come join us today. We're hoping to
I'm not a student.
He's the faculty, yeah. We're hoping to provide an engaging and informative session for you. So for those of you that are still thinking if graduate school is right for you, also for those of you who have either started the application process or are planning to do so in the near future. So hoping to provide some good info for all. So our panelists will be answering some of the common questions that we get, as well as some of the questions that were submitted through the RSVP form. We'd also like to hear from you in the audience. So if at any time you have a question, just maybe raise your hand, try to get the attention of either myself or my colleague Luke or Allison here, and we'll try to get that up to the audience. We are recording this, so we will repeat the question so it's captured in the mic, both for the recording and so everybody can hear. So just be mindful of that process. And then as a quick reminder, before we kick it off here, you came to hear from them, not from me. Some deadlines coming up. The Ph.D. application deadline to be considered for fellowships is December 15th. January 5th is the final application deadline. For our master's programs, so the computer science MS, MCS, and data science masters, the application deadline is March 1st. And the post-bac certificate application for fall is also March 1st. Spring deadline, which is already passed, is October 1st. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists each to give us your name, the program you're in, the year, and what your research area is. Maybe start with Libby.
Hi, I'm Libby Furland. I'm a sixth-year PhD student. My research is in natural language processing and human-computer interaction. What was the question? Is that it?
Name, program, year, and research area.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah, I have the mic. My name is Fafa Hoshiarga, and I'm the first year master's student in data science. And actually, I haven't picked any research area yet, but my research interest would be like in using like machine learning stuff and data mining related stuff.
Hey everyone, my name is Sai, and I'm a second year master's student in data science. And my research interest currently is data science applications in astrophysics. I'm also part of the data science and multi-messenger astrophysics program, and you can ask me questions about that later.
Hi, my name is Corey Knutson. This is my first year here as a PhD student in the computer science program, and my research area is underwater robotics.
And then maybe Professor Van Wyk, if you could maybe just introduce who you are, your research area, maybe your role, in admissions.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Eric Van Wyk. I'm a professor in computer science here. My research area is in programming languages, tools for making languages out of specifications, verifying properties of languages. I guess I'm mostly here because I'm also the chair of the graduate admissions committee. So I help Luke and Joe and Allison in that process and help other faculty review applications. So that's hopefully, so there are some questions I can address along those lines.
Great, thank you very much. So for the students, could you maybe tell us a little about why you chose our program, our department, and maybe a little bit about why you pursued graduate school in general?
I guess I'll go ahead. I chose the department here because there was actually a faculty member that I really, really wanted to work with, who is still my advisor. So that was my primary draw. I also thought that among the schools that I applied to, Minnesota was a big enough department, a very big department, very big school, that if I should choose to pursue another research direction, then there would probably be a lot of support for that, which has worked really well in my favor, considering I do a lot of interdisciplinary work. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, I can go next. I moved to Minnesota actually for family reasons. And then given my background, which is quite different from computer science and data science, which is in chemistry and experimental chemistry. So I was just thinking about like switching to this area for a bit. And then while searching and talking to professionals, I just came to know about this program at the University of Minnesota. So I got really excited about that. And given my really non-related area, I just wanted a strong foundation in computer science. That's why I just chose data science in computer science department.
I really like the choice of classes and the faculty in the data science program. I was looking at different data science programs in different colleges, but I really like the faculty and the research that they're doing. Also, like she said, this is a very big department, and a lot of interest and focus has been on data science. So I really like the improvements that they've been making.
Yes, I chose University of Minnesota Twin Cities because I originally did my undergraduate program at the University of Minnesota Duluth. It's just in northern Minnesota. And I got the chance to do research here as an undergrad. I really enjoyed the faculty that I worked with and everyone in the lab and just kind of the general like sense of community here. I bet most of you are students here, and there's a lot of great faculty in this department. And coming from a different school, I had great faculty at my other school, but you can tell that the people here really care about you and really has a great sense of community. In addition to the research that I wanted to do. So my interest was in robotics, and the kind of research and the resources that we have here is really great and can really help me along my way in my research track.
Cool, thanks. Professor, maybe would you mind telling us a little bit about why you chose to be a faculty member here at the University of Minnesota?
Yeah, good question. I guess I chose Minnesota partly because it was in the Midwest, close to my family, but also I had great times coming to the Twin Cities when I was an undergraduate and had friends here and wanted to live in a bigger metropolitan area for all that has to offer. And the department was, yeah, it's a great department. There's a lot of people I liked a lot when I visited. And so I was very happy that I got an offer here.
Great, thanks. Maybe to follow up on that, in your opinion, what makes the department stand out compared to maybe some of our competing universities? Put you on the spot a little bit.
Oh, that's hard to say. I mean, we have strengths in a lot of areas, I suppose. And, one thing about Minnesota that's a little different is that, all disciplines are represented at this university. So in a lot of public institutions, they're split, right? So I got my degree at the University of Iowa, and there's University of Iowa and there's Iowa State. And Iowa State has more of the engineering programs, and University of Iowa has more in the liberal arts and then mathematics and computer science. And there's a med school at one, but not the other. And so Minnesota is kind of unique in that all of those things, medical school, law, architecture, all those disciplines are in one university. So there's a lot of opportunity for interdisciplinary work that spans all those areas. So that's one thing that makes Minnesota unique amongst our peers, I think.
Thank you. Maybe Corey, I'll start with you for the next one. Could you, if you remember, can you tell us how many different schools you applied to? And then maybe, if you were accepted to any other ones, maybe how you came to this decision.
Yeah, so I think my situation is a little unique. I actually only applied to this school. I was considering, for me, I just had personal reasons to stay in Minnesota, and this was really the only school that I wanted to apply to in Minnesota. So if I didn't end up, getting accepted, that was fine. I had other options, but I really wanted to go from my undergraduate right into my PhD here. It's competitive. So I feel like I'm really lucky that I was admitted and accepted. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit of a oddball out. Most people, I assume, apply to a lot more schools than just one.
I actually applied to a few schools, maybe I think 5 to 6, and I was accepted in, I think, 2. I didn't check the other one. I was mainly interested in this one. Yeah, I accept. What was the other question?
How many you applied to, how many you were accepted to, and then if
Yeah,
there's
so-
anything, distinctive that made you choose the U.
I really like like I said, the choice of classes and the faculty, and they were giving of all the schools I researched, there was more of a focus on data science in this department than other departments. So that's why I chose it.
Um, when I just moved to Minnesota, actually it was a time that we struck into the pandemic. So the option for me was only just to do the online stuff. And through my search, I mean, I found also another program at another university, but it ended up that I was not eligible to apply to that because it was like outside this state. So yeah, I ended up actually applying to this program and I got accepted.
I applied to 5 programs and was accepted to 2. I think the big draw for me at Minnesota was, again, there was a faculty member that I really wanted to work with. Minnesota, out of all of the schools that I applied to, was the only one who needed a diversity statement, who had any sort of focus on kind of diversity and student support and representation in computer science and STEM, which is something I'm really passionate about. So that was a big draw for me.
Thank you. So we get a lot of questions about students trying to find people to write their letters of recommendation. So for the students, can you tell us a little bit about who your letter writers were? And I guess maybe why you chose to approach those particular people. Fafa, do you want to start out with this one?
Yeah. Are we talking about like the master's program?
Yeah, when you applied to your program.
Yeah.
Who,
when I just started in here, I just worked voluntarily for a professor. So one of my recommenders was that professor. The other one was like the professor I took a course with, and yeah, pretty much everybody that I kind of got the chance to work with or either took a course with.
It's similar for me. I got my letters of recommendation from undergraduate professors. I went to Purdue University, so I asked the professor I worked closely with in research, and 2 other professors who I developed a personal connection. So I would say I asked people who could say a little bit more about me than the average person, other than my grade. So that's what they're kind of looking at.
Yeah, I was kind of in a similar situation too. I did research with a professor in my undergraduate program. So I think his letter of recommendation was really strong. Just, whether it's the master's or the PhD program, they're looking for, some degree of like being able to do research and work independently on your own. So having that professor write me a letter, I think was pretty strong. I also got a letter of recommendation from my boss at the internship that I was at. And I think that was good to have as well, just, like kind of work ethic and, their letters of recommendation, like, of course, from like your own department and like someone that you're really close with, of course, they're going to give you a good letter, but being able to approach someone that you make a good relationship with, like over the course of a year or something like that, and have them be able to write you a strong letter is really important.
So similar to everyone here, except my undergraduate was at the University of Kentucky. I did research as an undergraduate, so I had my advisor write me a letter. I asked another computer science professor to write me a letter who I'd had for several classes and done well in those classes. I asked for someone outside of the computer science department just to, be a little bit more interdisciplinary. Someone, again, whose class I had done really well in, who I had met with personally, worked with over the course of the semester. I did also ask my boss for my internship, but you might run into this. It happened to me. My boss did not send me the letter in time. So just maybe have some backups in mind would be my advice too.
Thank you. Professor, is it safe to assume you've been approached to provide letters of recommendation throughout your career? Do you have advice for students who are going to approach either faculty or anyone in general about how you would go about requesting someone do that for them?
Yeah, this is challenging at a big department like ours. That a lot of times, there are a lot of students and not as many faculty. So opportunities to get to know faculty members well is a bit more, can be more challenging. So I write, yeah, I don't know, half a dozen letters every season. And some of them are from students that I work with and can write in a letter that is informed about, my time working with them. And other times I have students who were in, 2041 with me, and I maybe have a vague recollection of them in the class, or maybe I don't. And they're trying to get to 3 letters. And so in those cases, I'm providing, the third letter that doesn't say much, except they were in my class and they did well. And, they're a bit generic in that sense. So when you're trying to get letters, you mostly need one good one. That is someone who can speak to your, interest in research, why they think you might be good at research, why you might succeed in graduate school. It doesn't have to be because you did research with them and they, can point to some paper you wrote or something like that. It's more a statement about potential. We don't really expect people to come in with a lot of research experience. If they do, that's helpful. That's evidence of research capabilities, but that's only one way to sort of indicate that. But I think, yeah, letters from people outside of computer science can be very helpful. That's better than a generic letter from someone in the department that doesn't know you very well, right? Someone who says, wow, this person was in my, say, philosophy classes and did well and was very engaged and asked great questions. That's good evidence for an admissions committee.
Great, thank you. So similar to the letters of recommendations, we get a lot of questions about what to include in the statement of purpose. So what should it focus on? What do people want to know? So to the students first, if you remember, and if you don't, that's okay. Can you talk a little bit about what you wrote, maybe what you focused on, and maybe how much time you spent crafting your statement of purpose? Sai, do you want to start this one?
My undergrad was in electrical engineering, so it had nothing to do with data science. So I think if I remember correctly, in my essay, I talked about why I wanted to do data science and talked about some of my experience that could potentially be evidence that I could succeed in a field like data science. So I listed my research experience, how I think about things, and it's also good to research the department and find out why you want to do this. And it's really important to highlight why you want to do this and how do you think you'll succeed. So that's kind of what I touched upon.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. My story, I actually had more kind of background in the area that I wanted to study here. So I've been doing robotics since I was a little kid. Basically, I broke open electronics and hot glued stuff together and put a motor on it, And it may sound silly, like a silly anecdote to tell, but it kind of shows how, I didn't realize it at the time that I wanted to do this, but it's kind of my story and how I've gotten here. So I think it's important to show what kind of person you are and how those characteristics and how your story, it can fit into this department and how this will, given what you've done, it's a good way to show how you can succeed and where you've come from. In addition to getting good group grades and good GPA and doing research, but really telling your story and how it will fit with the department, I think is important.
So I'm kind of a dinosaur, relatively speaking, but in my statement of purpose, there's a theme with me. I like Corey, I kind of wrote about my story, about how I got there, some of my research experience, some of the programs that I had participated in, kind of related to research, outside of research, kind of supporting my involvement in the computer science department. One of the pieces of advice that was given me by my undergraduate advisor was to actually, like Sai said, actually look at the departments that you want to apply to, see for a PhD application, this is maybe a little more relevant, see if there are any specific faculty members that you might want to work with. Talk a little bit about I talked a little bit about the research that I wanted to do and why maybe I would be a good match for a few faculty members here. I think that's about it. I did also talk a little bit, like Corey said, about not only my experience, but since Minnesota had also had this focus on diversity, a little bit about what I personally could bring to the department.
Thank you. Professor, same,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I originally got admitted for the post-bac program, and I remember we were allowed to use the same material that we used for that program into the master's program. So I'm just saying this because I used the same thing for my master's program, but for the original letter I used for my admission to post-bac program, I tried to just explain a little bit about how I can just bring my own uniqueness into this program. And given my background in STEM and specifically in chemistry, which is far from engineering and also computer science, I thought this could be like my point to start with. And then quite before starting my study here at the University of Minnesota, I was assigned as a senior chemist in industry, and also I had a collection of observations in there how actually there is a gap between two areas, actually, how chemists and the data scientists actually found it like challenging to communicate with each other. And then this observation really helped me to think about the way to bridge this gap. And I tried to just include that into my letter. Because my background in chemistry is actually outside the States. During my PhD and postdoc in Germany and Australia, I never saw that amount of use of data. So I have no idea if the chemistry students here in the US just use the data that much during their studies. But in Germany, in Iran, and in Australia, it was not like that. So it was my first experience here in industry in the US to see how much data is actually produced and how important it is to be able to use that data to just make good decisions about which way industry is going and if better going. So yeah, I just tried also to include all those observations and stuff into my letter stuff. And given the research career that I've done, I thought this is something that I know a bit about research. So maybe, and at that point, I just needed less direction, but still the foundation in computer science was something that I was actually seeking. And I thought that would be a really great point for me.
If I could expand on my answer a little bit. If I made any claim in my essay, like say, oh, I like programming, I made sure to support that with some evidence. So you can't just mention your interest. You have to mention why those are your interests and what you've done to show that you're actually interested in this. So I would say if you make any claim, one must also support that claim with some kind of evidence. Is that fair to say?
Thank you. Professor, just to follow up, so from your perspective, working in the missions, reviewing applications, is there anything you want to maybe reinforce or add, about what makes an effective statement of purpose?
There's a lot of things I could say, having read many statements of purpose. So the things you've heard here are definitely true. So I'd agree with everything the other panelists have said. You do want to tell your story, and this is a statement of purpose, and so as part of it is about you and what is your purpose? Why do you want to go to grad school? And so I guess while I want to hear about hot gluing robots together at age of 7, by the time I've read the 25th story of getting a computer when I was 7 and I was going to change the world with this device, you're sort of like, yeah, we all felt this way. Now get to the part that is interesting, right? So so you want to think a little bit about who's reading this and what are they hoping to get out of this statement of purpose, right? And what I want to get is someone who has a somewhat clear idea of why they want to go to graduate school, not necessarily the topic they want to study, but this point about evidence of why you're interested in something is very important. To say, well, I really am interested in, programming languages. I'll pick my discipline. And the reason for that is I wrote these programs in this language, and then I tried another language, and it was a very different experience. And, the structure of languages is something I find interesting, and I would like to study more. And so those kinds of things where you go into the sort of reason you're interested in something is quite important. A statement that, is not sort of overly effusive about changing the world and your purpose after grad school. It's really about the purpose of why you want to go to grad school and what you hope to get out of that experience is what I kind of look for. I think a level of sort of interest in the intellectual aspects of the work is what we look for. The sort of the obvious extreme that is not that is I want to make a lot of money by getting a better degree, right? It's like, well, what is interesting about languages for you that makes you want to study them more? What is interesting about robotics that makes you want to study them more? And there should be something sort of inherent in the material that you find intriguing, and that's sort of your driver to want to go to graduate school. That is the most important part for me. It's also the only thing you really control directly. Your transcripts are sorted out. Your letters of recommendation are written by someone else. This is the one place you have two pages in essence to make your case of like, well, why do I want to do this? And you want to be honest about it because you want to end up in a place that's a good fit for you, right? If crafting a brilliant statement of purpose that's also not very accurate about your experience and your desires, you're going to end up in a place that you're not happy. And so, applying to a range of schools is a good idea in the hope that you end up at the one that's the right one for you. So applying for 5 or 6 schools is something that makes a lot of sense, where you have some sort of range. A lot of people will throw a Stanford or an MIT application in there, just like we, buy a lottery ticket on the weekend. Right? Well, maybe you'll get in there, but they get a lot of applications and from a lot of very good people. The competition is just ridiculous. So thinking about, where do I think I can get in? Do I have a safety school? There's some sort of, spread like that you also want to think about.
Great, thank you. So thinking about research. So I think all of you students are going to be doing research in your degree. Maybe can you talk about to what extent did you have an idea of what you wanted to do maybe before you applied during that process? And then how long has it taken you to figure out what your research direction is going to be? Libby, would you like to start?
I had a pretty solid idea of what I wanted to do or what I thought I wanted to do coming in because I had the undergraduate research background and I was really excited about robotics, and my undergraduate research is directly applicable to that. I ended up doing something completely different, obviously, and it took me. I'm maybe a little bit atypical. Most people are not here this long. I want to make that clear that yeah, I am an atypical story, but I did. It took me 3 years, I think, to find the problem that I was really, really passionate about, and that's been driving my work ever since.
I haven't done any research yet, so maybe I have not that much to say about this.
That's okay. Sai?
This is my second year. So when I came here last year, I didn't know what I was gonna do because data science is so varied and versatile. There's a hand in almost every other field. And then I discovered this program. It's called Data Science and Multi-Messenger Astrophysics. It's a collaboration of computer scientists, data scientists, physicists, and astrophysicists, and they apply data-driven solutions to astrophysical problems. And I thought that sounded cool, so I joined that program. And doing my capstone, like in the data science program, you can do like a 1 year or 1 semester capstone project. So I chose an astrophysics problem to research on, along with my research mates. So yeah, it took me a while to figure out what I really like. Turns out I really like images and signals and that kind of stuff. So my choice of classes has been towards that. So I would say the first semester at least you'll spend finding out what you want to do, at least in data science, because there's so many different things to do. So yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah, so it's my first semester here as a PhD student. In my undergrad, I did some research with a professor as well, not directly related to robotics though. So, I'm taking classes right now. You take classes for about 2 years usually. And in that time, I think is when you kind of develop your idea for what you actually want to research, like once you start researching full time, like for your thesis and that kind of stuff. So I have a general idea, like I enjoy robotics, but so my classes are helping me kind of explore different aspects down robotics, like what specifically I want to try to improve and like research in that regard. So.
Professor, I would follow up with you on the research question. So kind of in two parts. So the PhD program is obviously a research-based program. Our MS program, computer science MS, may be research-based, but students can also pursue a coursework only. For both programs, can you talk a little bit about how important a developed research idea is during the application process? And maybe what are some of the effective ways that students convey that?
So how much of a research plan is in the statement of purpose?
Yeah, so we get questions from students who are concerned that they don't have a really specific research idea.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how much of a formed research problem a student should have when they apply?
None. I don't know. I guess I don't see that as like a criteria. I expect, Libby went to grad school and changed her mind. I went to grad school thinking I was going to do AI and came to my senses and decided programming languages was really the interesting thing to study, to be biased about it. So, having this sort of like agenda of what you want to research, frankly, as an undergraduate, you're not quite ready to do that, right? You've taken a lot of courses and you have a lot of ideas, hopefully of things that are interesting, but you may not have been, in that environment of like, well, here's an open-ended question. Can we answer this question? Is there an answer to this research question or not? And maybe it kind of fizzles and there's no good way to pursue this direction, or it opens up into something interesting and it takes various twists and turns. And so, I'm actually a little skeptical of statements that have, a very precise agenda of what they want to follow, because it's probably not going to be that. You're probably going to discover other things along the way that are more interesting than what you thought you wanted to do. So that statement, I think, is more about, why do I want to spend more time in school, right? What drives me to want to learn more and get to the point where I can do research and discover things that are not yet known. And that's the sort of thing that I think is more interesting than a research agenda. You want to have some direction that, well, I want to do programming languages as opposed to databases. And the reason I want to do programming languages is A, B, and C. And I've thought about these kinds of problems in this discipline. And I think I would like to do more of that. That shows a maturity of thinking that leads one, that shows some potential for doing well in research. So that's the sort of thing that's important in that statement. And having stuff to talk about is also important. So when, one sort of thing that is not a red flag, but when someone has a 4.0 GPA, that doesn't really tell me much, right? It tells me maybe this person is really great on their homework assignments, but isn't going to be successful when the problem is very open-ended. And so students who have a lower GPA, but did a bunch of cool stuff on the side because they blew off some courses they didn't find interesting, that maybe is more evidence of research potential than that high GPA. I got a C in accounting when I was an undergraduate because it was the most boring topic I'd ever encountered. And so I just thought, I'm not going to invest my time in something that I just don't find interesting. I don't want to fail this class, so we'll get by. But there's interesting, cool stuff to do, and you should go do it. And if it means getting a B in another class, that's fine. That's something that when I looked at statement of purpose, there's something there that is worth reading, some interest, some experience. And that's more important than a big laid out agenda or a high GPA, or the high GRE scores. I guess we don't do GRE scores anymore, but that was also something there's not much information in those numbers.
Great, thank you. It's a question we get a lot, so that's good advice. Related, Professor, could you talk about so for the PhD program in particular, should students be reaching out to faculty ahead of time? And if so, maybe what are some tips to doing that, to kind of contacting prospective doctoral advisors before the application process begins?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea. I think, as Libby said, it's important to look at an institution of who is there you might want to work with. And so identifying people whose research sort of seems to align with your interests is something you want to spend some time doing. And then sending an email and saying, oh, I read about your research and I took a look at these papers and it kind of aligns with my interests. Are you looking for new students in the upcoming year? What is it that you sort of look for in students? Here's my sort of background. I'd love to chat more if you think I might be a good fit. Right. So that's the sort of email that I like to see and respond to, and often talk to people who send those. I also get emails of, dear sir, I'm really interested in your research. I do all this great work in machine learning. I'm like, that's not what I do. So make sure that email is directed to a person and use their name, and you've read over some of their work to at least have some idea what they're doing. Your professors are pretty good at hitting delete on their email. And so, and if not delete, sort of archive, and I'll come back to these later, which is essentially the same as delete. That you want to sort of break through that flood of email. And when you get these that are not directed at you at all, you're like, yeah, I don't feel obligated to respond to those. When someone says, I read your webpage, I like your work in this area, I at least feel like, oh, they put in some effort. It's fair for me to put in some effort.
Thank you. So we're going to switch a little bit more from admissions-based to maybe some topics more about student life, being a graduate student here. So we can start with Corey for this one. Can you talk about what some of the opportunities on campus, maybe some of the resources that you found most helpful? It can either be directly related to academics or not related at all.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know, we were almost just talking about this before this panel, but the CSGSA, I'm sure you'll talk more about this, but you get reached out to a lot by organizations like CSGA. There's COGS, Council of Graduate Students, and they host a whole bunch of events during the school year. I haven't attended any yet, but I'm planning to now that we just talked. So there's things like that. If you're applying to like a specific advisor, like for the PhD program, for example, you can reach out to them and ask them questions about this kind of stuff, or to students in your lab who either like are joining you for they're also joining you for their first year, or have been there for a couple of years. Reaching out to Luke and the whole team here about like questions, stuff like that. They've been very responsive. So that's an additional resource as well.
Academically, I would say there are many programs, and one of them was the astrophysics one I mentioned, plugged for the third time. That was really helpful. I met a whole bunch of people through that, and got interested in their interests, and sort of became social like that. And as you mentioned, there's a computer science graduate student association, and there's also a Slack with all the CS students, all the CS grad students in it. So there's a lot of interaction on that. And the Graduate Student Association, we also host a ton of cool events. We haven't done a ton of in-person ones. Actually none last year, but we're slowly building up this year. So social life wise, that's a good place. You can meet a lot of people on the Slack. I actually met like a good friend group of mine on the Slack. We just like in the first week of this semester, we just said, oh, I'm going to this thing. Does anyone else want to come with? And then they said yes. And yeah, I've been hanging out with them ever since. And so that's one good way to do social stuff. And the academic stuff, obviously you can reach out. You can look at the programs available. And you can also talk to professors and they can direct you to other programs. So that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with whatever Chloe Sai said. I particularly found this Slack channel that Sai would mention very helpful, like in terms of like talking to other graduate students and just using the experience, like especially for course selection, and then what was their experience like with, I mean, each professor. I think that's really helpful. I mean, this is like a first-hand experience and actually helps a lot. I think they have a Discord channel as well, right? If I'm not mistaken. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm not also too sure about that one too. Yeah. And for me, myself, I mean, I always like reach out to my graduate coordinator, like in this case, I mean, whenever I'm just unsure about my courses or other stuff, I think, yeah, Allison is the first person I would just reach out for help. And I find it like really helpful for myself. And during this pandemic, actually, it was not that much of socializing. We kind of e-socialized, but like the Slack, like last minute lunch, and then like some donuts and stuff in like the Keller Hall communal area or something. It was like announcing there. So it's a good actually resource for you or to just find opportunities.
Yeah, last year was brutal. There was no interaction. It was kind of bleak. But this year I've been forcing myself to do a lot of social things. And every plug again for the CSGSA, every Friday we host a coffee hour in the basement. And it's free food, free interaction.
Well, first thing I want to say is that if you apply to a school and they're recruiting you and invite you to a visit day, you should make every effort to go to that, because that's probably where I got the best picture of where I really wanted to be. So when I came to Minnesota, we actually met. They had us go to the coffee hour, which has been a long-standing tradition. And I met some folks who were involved in organizations like CSGSA. There's F-Grads here, which is specifically for women in graduate school in computer science. So I knew coming in that there were a lot of organizations I was interested in. And I'm actually the CSGSA president now. I've always been involved in things. The other thing I would say is look at course catalogs. So within the department, I noticed that with Minnesota and other schools too, you are required to have some courses outside of the department. So I kind of looked around to see what was available. I knew coming into grad school that I was really interested in staying in academia and pursuing a faculty position. So the U actually has a course geared specifically towards that that I was really excited about. And there was one other class that I was really excited about that I figured if I had time, I'd take it. So there were a bunch of different factors in kind of the social academic realm that I was considering.
Professor, is there anything that you encourage your students to do, or is it kind of, that's the line?
I would echo what Libby said about going to visit places to get a feeling for things and talking to other students. The other students that are in the program are your most honest source of information about that program. Minnesota, I think, is a pretty nice place to go. I think it's changed for the better. A long time ago, when I applied to grad school, I came here and ended up in someone's office and they gave me a catalog when I asked, what do people do here? Like, well, here it's in the catalog. And I was on campus for an hour and a half of like, yeah, I'm not coming here, and left, right? And so things like we do a heck of a lot better job now in welcoming students, and it's a much more engaging environment. When I applied for faculty positions, that was sort of a question in my mind, like, well, I like Minneapolis. I hope the department's better than it was, gosh, like 10 years before when I had applied. So, and it was, and it is much better. So So getting to know students on these visit days is a very important thing. And then, yeah, I mean, I'm going out to dinner tonight with my graduate students. So we do socialize, and not everyone does that, but one of my grad students who started last year and suffered through the bleak no social time for a year, she had said, why don't we like do some stuff? Because, now we can finally do things. And so we're going to go to dinner tonight. So the social stuff is important, right? You don't want to work 90 hours a week and think that's your only ticket to success. You'll burn out, you'll be unhappy, you'll do worse, right? So the PhD is a degree where you have to solve hard problems, and you can't do that when you're tired. You need exercise, you need rest. You come back the next day and in the morning solve the problem or make progress on it because you're fresh and awake. So the social stuff and exercise and rest is an important part of your program.
Great, thanks. Yeah, we're all trying to relearn how to be social, I think. So for the students, maybe Fafa, I'll start with you on this one. You talk about maybe what your typical course load is from term to term, and how has that impacted maybe other parts of your life, like social work, things like that?
Yeah, good question. For the last 3 semesters, actually, I had between 6 to 10 credits, and I think, or even 11 for one course. But I think it was really depending on the course. I mean, sometimes it was like a 4 credit course, but not that much demanding. But sometimes it's like a 3 credit course, but like more demanding than any of the 4 credit course. So I had all the mixture of experience with this for the last year, and I'm still getting used to this. But I think, it's a good question. I mean, the matter of like a work-life balance, I think it's important to actually be aware of the fact that we really need to prioritize, and we are not able to do best in everything and anything. So I have to say no to many things to be able to just do my the thing that is like more important for me at the moment. So but I honestly cannot say that I'm able to just fulfill every like aspects of life like in a perfect way. So I really have to sacrifice in many ways.
Thanks.
Well, when I first came here, I was advised to take maybe 2 or 3 classes, and I would agree with her. 2 or 3 classes is fine, but it also depends on the class. Like for example, there's a intro to data mining, which is I think 3 credits, but it's more like a 5 credit class. So iterating back to the Slack, it's really good to talk to people and find out what the course load is actually like, because this semester I enrolled for 3 classes, but each of those classes has a project, and so it's kind of a lot. So I didn't do a ton of research this year. I was just excited to meet new people and take different classes. But one thing I would say is find out what the class entails, because the cred doesn't usually tell the whole story. And 2 or 3 classes and a project, I would say, would be perfect.
Yeah. One thing I didn't completely understand when I was still like an undergraduate is that when you go to your graduate program, you take half as many classes, basically. So like where 16 credits, 16, 18 credits is normal in undergraduate, it's like 8 to 9. 9 is like kind of high, depending on the classes. So it takes half as many credits, but you're still very busy during the day. So the other half of your time is filled with either a TA position or an RA or research position. So I think it's your workload is different than in your undergraduate, whereas you're still doing classes, but your time is kind of split a lot more between different things. So it's a different kind of work, but it's still important to make sure that you have time to relax and hang out with friends and do all the things that you enjoy.
So when I was taking classes, I'm at the point where I don't take classes anymore. I took usually 6, sometimes 9 hours a semester. You are like 6 hours is full time for a graduate student. So, and your workload is radically different. The courses are not your primary focus. You'll have other things going on, like you'll have a TA position, you'll have an RA position. So I think in terms of work-life balance, you are expected to be a lot more independent as a graduate student. And I would say that you should come into graduate school having maybe some time management strategies already in place, because that's going to be your most important thing. Don't plan on taking too many credits a semester, because there are other things that you need to spend your time on. You should be spending most of your time on research if possible, at least in a PhD program. With the caveat though, that like your first semester, maybe even up to your first year, but definitely your first semester, don't expect to get a whole lot of research done. You're kind of acclimating, and it really is radically different from the undergrad experience. So don't beat yourself up too much if it's maybe like you have a semester that is a little low key. Once you, in a PhD program, you'll get to a point where you're done with your classes and you're focusing on your dissertation research. At that point, in terms of maintaining a work-life balance, I really tried to make it a 9 to 5 in terms of my research. That changes, of course, if there's a big paper deadline, or if there's something that I really, really want to get done, deadlines, et cetera. But again, the time organization and maintaining a really steady schedule, especially when you're out of classes, is really, really important.
I think all I'm doing is just saying, yeah, what Libby said was the thing. But that's really important. I feel this as a professor, right? In teaching or taking classes, you have day-to-day things that are urgent, but maybe not important. And you have important things like your research that is not urgent, that there is no deadline tomorrow or this week. And so you don't want to get, 3 months into the semester and go like, well, my classes are going well, but I haven't done any reading or research work. And so trying to block time to say, well, on some days I don't do classwork, I do other stuff, is really important. So that time management is a huge thing to try and get a handle on.
Cool. Thank you. And Libby, thanks for providing context. So full-time status here at the university is 6 credits. And 14 credits is the limit any graduate student can take in any given semester. So I think we have time for maybe 1, maybe 2 questions here. So we get a lot of questions about being a TA or an RA. So for students on the panel who have done that, can you talk about maybe just briefly what it's like to hold a teaching or research assistantship, and what's kind of the day-to-day duties that you'll be performing? So for whoever's done that.
I've done all of the above, but for a TA position, it will depend a little bit on the class and not the subject matter, but the class, specifically like the class structure. I've always TA'd for 3081, which is the infamous one. You may be, in that case, you are like leading lab sections, you have some active, not lecturing responsibilities, but there is kind of a more involved teaching responsibility. For some classes, you'll be only a grader, so the workload is much different. TA-ship kind of comes in bursts, in my experience. There'll be kind of roles when you're just doing like the standard lab sessions, and then you'll have like students have a project deadline or an exam, and then it's like really intensely focused days of grading and that sort of thing. So it's you will average out to about a 50%. So for appointments, you're considered a full support appointment is 50%. So for a 50% appointment as a TA, you'll be doing about 20 hours a week, and that it averages out, but you do have to kind of plan in that there's going to be lulls and there's going to be bursts. So don't be too surprised by that.
I am also TAing right now for 3081. And yes, I completely agree. There are lulls and bursts right now. But yeah, no, I don't see myself being like a faculty in the future either. I foresee probably going to industry, but I enjoy, working with students and, kind of just the classroom learning aspect. So most of my time I help develop the project for the class. It definitely depends like what class, you're TAing for. I have a friend who's TAing and he just does all grading all the time. So it really depends on the professor and the course. But yeah, so some of my duties are working, developing the project for the lessons, for the labs and stuff like that. And also holding office hours, like on Discord mostly. And answering students' questions and that kind of stuff.
Good, thank you. So last question I'll throw out here, it's about internships and like any other work opportunities. So again, anybody on the panel who's done that, can you talk a little bit about what you did and how you kind of secured that opportunity?
I interned in the summer at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, at the NCSA, that's National Center for Supercomputing Applications. And I got that through the astrophysics program. So it was about making the connections. So I got to know about this program through a professor there because they had worked with the professor I worked with over the summer, and a professor here were friends, and sort of brought the internship to our notice. So I would say getting an internship is a lot about the connections. So yeah, that's how I got mine.
Yeah, thanks.
I can speak to that as well. For me, it was kind of the opposite. I didn't really know anyone when I was in my undergrad program that had opportunities for me to get an internship. So I just applied everywhere. I don't remember how many places I applied to, but I applied. And I got accepted to one, which was great. And then once you kind of get accepted, in my experience, when I got accepted in this internship, that kind of opened a lot of doors, including to the University of Minnesota here. There were some people at my work that, came from here, or they're still students and they're interning there as well. That opens a lot of opportunities. So you definitely have to be persistent, but once you get in it, it opens a lot of doors. And it doesn't even have to be the thing that you're super passionate about. You definitely want to have an interest in your work and do good work. But this doesn't have to be the place that you're going to spend the rest of your career at. It opens opportunities.
I would say the way I've come across most things, once you get into grad school, it's really all about networking. So hopefully you've been pursuing some opportunities in undergraduate. Like I did a CREU. If you get a chance to do a DREU, you can make contacts with other faculty members that either in your institution or in other institutions, and they'll often have a lead on maybe some research internships or something else that you might be interested in. And that's primarily where I've gotten a lot of my opportunities.
Great, thanks. We do have a dedicated career center here, which is a great resource for students looking not only for internships, but for jobs after you graduate. So I think we're right at time here. So I think let's give our panel a hand. Thank you for volunteering. Thanks for joining us.